Hello, good day everyone. Um, Today we're going to be going in depth on index law. One of our SAT question we saw one time ago, I think that should be like 2 weeks ago. After solving that, we tried to explain some of this law before solving the question, just making you to understand what you need to do if you have such question, because people miss something because they don't understand what they need to do. But if they have the understanding, they tend to do well. So that's why we try to explain that question. I remember the question should not take you less than 5 seconds if you know what to do. So that's why we try to explain that. So one of the students sent a message to us that, please, can we try to solve question on each of the laws? And then, we say, we're going to try to go in depth. So today we're going to be trying to explain the laws. After explaining the law, we will solve series of questions, and then so that you can understand what you need to do when you are faced with those questions. Index law, also you can see it as exponential law or exponential properties. This should be grade 6, grade 7, and probably grade 8. Little of grade 8, you will see come across this. So now, before we go in, let's try to explain what is our index. What is it called? So now, imagine if you have something like this, a raised to power n. Now you need to understand that this a is called base. This a is called base. And why this n is called what? Index. Or we can call it power. Or we can also call it what? Exponent. So we can also call that what? We can call it base, index, power, exponent. Okay. So now let's try to explain this before we now go into some question and while we are solving some question, I'll be referring us back to this law. So see, look at this question, look at the law so that you can understand it if you come across that. Okay, now, if you look at it, this says what? Now you need to understand also in index law, multiplication is what? Is addition. Why division is what? Is subtraction. Understand that. When you know that for good. Now, m raised to power n times a raised to power n times a raised to power n. What does that imply? It's telling us that what? Remember, you have to have the same base before you can be able to what? Come up with this. If you're having different base, you can't be able to do that. It must be what? The same base. So now a raised to power what? N plus n. We will solve some question relating to that, and then you will see that too. A raised to power m divided by what? A raised to power n. What does that imply? It means what? A raised to power what? M minus n. Very simple. A raised to power n to power extensive raised to power what? N. It means that what? The power must multiply what you have, what is raised to power what? A. Which means what? N times. This is different from, remember too that parenthesis means what? Multiplication. Parenthesis means multiplication. But in this instance, don't go ahead. Some students always do that mistake and they will say what? In this, they will say what? A into what? M plus n. This is what? This is wrong. In this instance, no, it is wrong. This is what? The right thing. Which is what? A raised to power what? M times n. We will solve some question relating to that and then we will understand that. Okay. AB raised to power what? N. What does that mean? It means that what? This power must go with what? Everything you have in your parentheses. And that's why we have A raised to power N, B raised to power what? N. Okay. So, A raised to power 1. It means anything raised to power 1 will always give you back what? That number. So, or that what? That variable. So that's why we have what? A. I love this so much. A raised to power 0. Anything raised to power 0, just know that what? Is 1. When you see that anywhere, know that what? Anything raised to power 0 is 1. Now, student always makes mistake on this part. A raised to power what? 1 divided by m. Now, the one below is telling you what is the root. That is, root of that what? Of the base raised to power what? What you have as a what? Numerator. 1 is there, so 1. You know, anything raised to power 1 is still going to give you what? That's what? That base back. So that's why we didn't what? You cannot also ignore it. You may not put it. You may not put it because it's still going to give you what? Back that what? That base. Now for this, A raised to power what? N divided by N. What does that mean? Now this is what? A physical word. That means it's not as what we have here. So that means this one is what? The root into what? A raised to power what? M. Remember, your denominator is always the root. It can be what? Cube root. It can be fourth root, fifth root. Remember, whatever you have here means what? The root. And then raised to power what? What you have as your numerator, which is the M. We will solve a question relating to that, and then we will understand that. A raised to power what? Minus M. This negative means what? It means this. It means 1 divided by what? A raised to power what? M. We will solve one question relating to that too, and then we can understand that. So, let's just try, because some of the things is very easy to say, some of these laws. It's very easy to say it. But another thing is for you to be able to relate it to a particular question. So let's relate it to a particular question and then see what we're going to have, because that is the most important thing, to know how to be able to solve questions with it. Okay, now let's do that. Okay, now let's look at this question. When we have the question, I will tell us where it's relating to. Now, if you look at this, if you have something like this, let's say 5 raised to power 2 times 5 raised to power 4. If you look at this, is what? Law is referring to what? This first law. And then remember, anything multiplication is what? Is what? Addition, depending when you're having what? The same base. We have the same base. So this is going to be what? 2 plus 4. And then give us what? 5 raised to power what? 6. So that's it. So it means 5 will go in what? In 6 places. Okay. So let's try to look at another question. If you have something like this, 4 raised to power 3 divided by what? 4 raised to power what? 2. Remember that what? Division means what? Subtraction. So what do you have? This one will give us 4 raised to power what? 3 minus 2. And then that will give us what? 4. Because this will give us what? 1. And then remember, anything raised to power 1 will give us what? Back what? That base that we have. Okay. Let's also look at more question. Let's look at more question. Now let's look at something like this. Let's take this off so you have more space. So let's look at this question. AB raised to power what? 5. That is referring to this. If you look at this, something like this. So what we're going to be is going to be what? A raised to the power 5, B raised to the power 5. Remember, this is also the same thing as what? A raised to the power 5 times B raised to the power 5. But you can't do anything. You can't say A times it, no, because they're not having the same base. So this is going to be your answer for this kind of question. Okay, so now let's look at another question. If you have something like this, 4 raised to the power 1 all over 2, this is referring to something like this. This is the look at the law. You see that? So that means this is what? Root, square root of 4 raised to the power 1. Remember, you don't need to put the 1 because, you know, that doesn't imply it's still going to give you the same 4. So this is what is going to be what? 2. Remember that the square root of 4 is what? Is 2. Very good. Now let's look at this question. I want to explain something, but let's look at this question before I explain that. Now, if you have something like this, 4 raised to the power 3 all over 2. Now, look at this question. So, it means that what? It means that what? The square root of 4 raised to the power what? Over 3. Now, when you have this kind of question, you have to solve, you have to what? Follow what? Your Pendex. So, what you have to be able to solve what? Your 4 raised to the power 3 first, which is the power first before you what? Do your square roots. Now, which means this will give you what? 4 times 4 times 4. And then 4 times 4, 16. 16 times 4 will give us what? 64. 64. So what's going to be the square root of 64 is what? Is 8. You can see that? So, you see that? So that is that. You can see that is this kind of question. Always remember, your denominator is always the root. Your denominator is always what? The root. And then your numerator is always what? The power. Okay. So that is that for that. Now let's try to look at some other more a little bit more advanced questions, and then you know, we use that to explain. So now let's look at this question. P raised to the power 5 into 3 raised to the power 3 times P raised to the power 4 parenthesis what? 2. Now let's look at this question. This question looks like now is having a lot of combined things together. So what are you going to do here? First, you have to what? Do this first. And then remember that this is exactly like what? This. This is what? See? So which means this is what? P raised to the power what? 5 times 3 times P raised to the power what? 4 times 2. This will give us what? P raised to the power what? 15 times P raised to the power what? 8. Now it's now back to what? The first law. See that? So what are we going to do here? That means what? P raised to the power what? 15 plus 8. And then that means what? P will give us what? That should give us 23. So that is the answer. So you can see that from another laws resulting to another law. But make sure that remember this one I told you earlier on. This is not the same thing as P plus 3. No. Yes, parenthesis means multiplication, but that law doesn't imply that. You have to what? Multiply that before then you can what? Go back and then get other what? Things that you need to get. Okay. Now, let's look at some other question and then so let's look at this question. G raised to the power 3 parenthesis 4 times H raised to the power 2 parenthesis 5, then G 2 2 times h raised by 4. But this is 2. Now let's look at this question. Now it combines a lot of law, but let's solve it. Let's try to break it down. You have to solve them one after the other before you can then know what you need to do. So this will give us, so let's try, I'll break it down while I'm solving it. This will give us what? G into what? 3 times 4, then times, this will give us what? H 2 times 5, all over what? G 2 times 2 times H 4 times 2. Okay, so if you do that, this will give us what? G raised by what? 12 times H raised by what? 10 divided by what? G raised by what? 4 times H raised by what? 8. Now, if you look at this right now, it's now resulting into this. Remember that this law, m raised to power m is the same thing as what? You can also, it's the same as this. Divide. So now, if you look at it now, you're having G and G is here, the same variables. So what can you do? What can we do here? Now, we cannot bring them together. Let's go ahead. So this will give us what? G yes, will give us G raised to power. Here you have G divided by G raised to power 4 times H all over 10 divided by what? H raised to power 8. So now you can see that now we are now into this law. So which this can give us what? G raised to power what? 12 minus 4 times H raised to power what? 10 minus 8. So this will give us what? G into what? 12 minus 4. That will give us 8 times H, which is 10 minus 8. That will give us what? 2. And that should be what? Our answer. So you can see that from different laws, resolving to another law, and then eventually what? We are having what? Our answer. The most important thing is knowing the laws and knowing how to use it to what? Applying it into what? Some questions. Very important. There's no how you will see this question in your PSAT, you will see it in your SAT. Very important. We are doing this because one of our students sent a question, sent some of the feedback and saying, can we go in depth in what? Explaining and solving some question based on index law, and that's why we are doing that. We always say, send us a question. No, every question is very important to us. So far, we're trying to what? Make sure that what? We do everything that would give you 100% what? Satisfaction. So send any questions to us, and then we are sure of what? Replying you with whatever anything you ask us to do. Thank you very much. Don't forget to follow us on our social media handles. Our summer program is also on, from July 5th to August 18th. Very, very important. You can connect with us. Make sure you schedule classes, take your spot, and then we are sure to what? To give you our best. Thank you very much. Bye.